specialist at the University of Illinois, Chicago.
And I'm Becky Bonarek. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a lecturer at the University of Illinois Chicago Tutorium.
Our teaching tip for today is on fostering advanced reading skills in multilingual learners of English with scaffolded, independent, think-aloud activities. You'll see this QR code both now and throughout our presentation. You can use it to access these presentation slides, our materials, and sample student Think Aloud videos. Here's our agenda for today. We'll look at using Think-Alouds as a learning tool in a reading course, how to scaffold Think-Aloud reading strategies so that learners are able to reliably access a variety of strategies to assist them when reading, and tips for reinforcing and troubleshooting the scaffolded reading strategies throughout a course. So let's start by defining Think Aloud. A Think Aloud is a learning strategy in which the learner verbalizes what they are thinking as they complete a task. Think Alouds are an effective strategy in many learning situations. In this case, we're focusing on having readers use Think Alouds as they read. There are a couple of noted benefits of using Think-Alouds in a reading course. For one, teachers or high-performing readers can use Think-Alouds to model the moves that expert readers make. Additionally, Think-Alouds can help the teacher monitor learners' reading comprehension and analysis of a text. The reading process is often opaque, but a Think Aloud can illuminate what's going on in a reader's mind as they read, making it easier for teachers to understand where additional support is needed. Here's a look at what we did and why. We work with international college freshmen enrolled in developmental reading and writing courses to prepare them for our university's freshman composition courses. We noticed that while our students were generally able to preview texts and activate their prior knowledge when reading on their own, they ignored or hesitated to use many advanced moves made by expert readers, such as questioning the text or recognizing bias. In order to train our students to access a variety of metacognitive strategies when reading, we developed a scaffolded framework categorizing Think Aloud strategies into 3 levels of engagement with the text. These include basic strategies, such as previewing the text and checking for understanding, advanced strategies, such as summarizing paragraphs and noticing patterns of organization, and expert strategies, including evaluating an author's claims and making predictions while reading.
Now I'll take you through the framework and how we scaffolded these strategies into categories. For context, in our course, there are 7 Think Aloud assignments in total. These assignments are throughout the semester, allowing students to build their skills gradually. As aforementioned, the reading skills are divided into 3 levels. Basic. These skills should be demonstrated on all Think Aloud assignments. Advanced. These skills should be demonstrated on Think Alouds 3 through 7. And expert. These skills should be demonstrated on the last Think Alouds 5 through 7. This repetition allows students to practice and become more proficient in the skills in that category before adding new skills. So, basic strategies include text previewing strategies. These are all the strategies that students should employ before they begin reading. These include analyzing the title and finding unfamiliar vocabulary, making predictions based on the title, analyzing pictures and graphs, analyzing subheadings, skimming the first and last paragraphs or reading the first sentence of each paragraph, and recalling what students already know about the subject. For advanced strategies, these include analyzing the text. These are strategies that generally happen while students are reading and connect disparate parts of the text. These strategies include summarizing individual paragraphs, considering genre or purpose for reading, noticing connections between paragraphs, and noticing organizational pattern through keywords and transitions. Expert strategies evaluate the text. These strategies go beyond what the text is saying and encourage students to connect with the text on a deeper level. These strategies include evaluating claims against personal knowledge or experience, forming and answering questions while reading, understanding the author's purpose and potential bias, and making predictions while reading. So we don't have time now to show these two clips, but we do have two clips of example Think Aloud assignments from actual students. The QR code at the bottom of your screen will take you to the folder with the clips in it that you can watch on your own time. The first clip demonstrates strategies in the basic level. You'll watch the student as he previews the subheading but doesn't understand. Then you'll cut to while he's reading, where he reflects on the meaning of the subheading in context. This clip demonstrates the effect of raising awareness of authorial purpose, understanding argument and text construction, reflecting on comprehension, and use of reading strategies. The second clip, which you can also find in the folder that we shared with you by accessing the QR code at the bottom of your screen. The second student in the second clip demonstrates all three levels, basic, advanced, and expert. You'll watch the student walk the instructor through how he understands the assignment requirements, including the three levels of skills. Then you'll cut to the student previewing the title, where he demonstrates paraphrasing and activating his background knowledge. As a whole, this clip demonstrates the student's metalinguistic awareness of reading strategies, reflection on past reading strategy use, and application to outside texts and knowledge. Knowing and scaffolding these strategies is one thing, but instructors need to reinforce the scaffolding and encourage iterative use of these skills. So how can we reinforce them? First, instructors should review general feedback in class. Note what general trends, both positive and negative, you're seeing in their assignments, and remind students of which skills they should be using. Second, reinforce use of these skills in the classroom. When completing activities in class, consider including the strategies they're working on in their Think-Alouds, even when that strategy isn't the goal for the class session. For example, before every in-class reading, I ask my students to walk me through how they would use the basic strategies to preview the text we're about to read. Third, when assigning a Think Aloud, remind students in class when new skills will be added or phased in. Consider showing the feedback form or the assignment guidelines again as a reminder. Next, explicitly state when a skill is included in your course. For example, when you introduce the concept of recognizing bias in class, remind students that this is one of the expert skills that they should demonstrate in their Think Aloud assignments. Then, model and remodel how to perform the strategy in a Think Aloud setting. Finally, consider giving usage goals. Encourage students to use new or previously unused strategies by giving them a target number to utilize for each Think Aloud. This encourages students to not rely on the same strategies every time they read. Finally, today, we'll discuss some common challenges in implementing the scaffolded Think Aloud technique and give tips and tricks to overcome them. The most common problem students have is that they can't remember the strategies they're supposed to use and read at the same time. We suggest that students keep the feedback document open alongside the reading doc, or Students can print out the feedback document or assignment guidelines and have the paper next to them while they read. At the very least, students should be encouraged to review the list of strategies before recording. My most successful students had the reading text and the feedback doc open at the same time, either on the same screen or on different screens. Another challenge could be that your course doesn't cover all the skills mentioned in the scaffolding. In that case, use the scaffolding as a framework and categorize the strategies you teach. Start with the ideas of basic comprehension, deeper comprehension, and finally, application of ideas from outside of the text. Consider which skills require higher order thinking and deeper understanding of the text. The final challenge is that your students are lower level, and you're concerned that you can't implement this framework with your students. Scaffolding these strategies at lower proficiency levels simply requires more teacher involvement and support. For example, the instructor should record an example of themselves demonstrating various Think-Aloud strategies, and students should have access to and be able to reference the sample whenever they want. If possible, consider doing Think-Alouds in real time, face-to-face, so that the instructor can prompt or encourage students to use various strategies. This can reduce cognitive load for less proficient students. A related concern is text length, as lower level students typically require a shorter text length. However, Think-Alouds can be applied to shorter texts. They would just involve fewer, more targeted reading strategies.
Thank you for listening to our talk. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a QR code where you can find these slides, the materials that we use in class with students to teach them how to do Think-Alouds, and some recordings of students as they do their Think-Alouds. Our contact information is here as well. We'd be delighted for you to reach out with any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trischa. Thank you, Becky, for this insightful presentation. It was both informative and engaging, and I'm sure you will receive a lot of questions from our participants. Thank you again. Dear participants, do you want to ask anything or maybe to say something? No? Okay. So again, thank you. Thank you for your support, for standing with Ukraine. Okay. And now, please, just a moment. So, welcome, Ashley Fifer. Yes, and her presentation from competition to communication. English Lexis Championship boosts speaking confidence in Vietnamese learners of English. Please, Ashley. Ashley, yes. Oh,
hi.
Yeah, yes. Please share your screen and you can start. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see everyone. I just want to thank everybody for this wonderful opportunity and to get to know some of you and attend some sessions today. I'm very appreciative. I wanted to actually explain kind of a special project that I have done with some students very, very recently. And I'll just start with a quick introduction of myself. And I'll share my screen. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So my name is Ashley Fifer, and I teach at, like the screen said, Nassau Community College, which is just about 20 miles outside of New York City. And this is a very large community college. I actually live in New York City, so I apologize for the noise. If you hear it, it's hard to escape it where I live. So this is actually, however, not something that I did through my home institution. This is actually something that I participated in through the English language programs. And if you have ever been to or met someone maybe from the TESOL International Conference, a lot of times they really talk about this program. And this was my first time participating, and it was absolutely incredible. And so as part of this program, I actually partnered with a university in Hanoi, Vietnam, and we worked together kind of beginning in November last year, and then we actually started co-teaching classes virtually in February this year, and it just ended about 3 weeks ago. And so during this time, I actually co-taught about 5 different courses, depending on the week, and I led a weekly tutoring session with students at the university. And these are all students who are aspiring English teachers. And so this was a really nice partnership between the universities. It was a wonderful learning experience for me. And, you know, you throw in the time change, technological problems, a lot of other things that my students had, like mandatory military service. It was just a wonderful experience. But what I was primarily focused on with the students was test prep, you know, like it is very common. So the students really had to improve their writing and speaking skills. I would say those were the 2 areas of focus. And so this is a project that I worked on in a speaking course for actually it was a high intermediate course, although I would say many of them were a little bit more advanced in the group. And so this is 2 of the 5 courses that I co-taught participated in a championship at the end of our time together. So, you know, this kind of just happened a few weeks ago. You are all the first people that are kind of hearing about this project. So I apologize, the picture's off a little bit here, but you can see the picture of some of the students here. This is one of the classes with my co-teacher. And I want to kind of explain how the competition worked, because I was actually a guest judge, but I was virtual. You can kind of see me on the screen in the background there. So you can imagine how this could be beneficial, how this could be fun, but also maybe could present some challenges. So there were 3 different judges. We had kind of the dean of the English program at the university. We had the head teacher for the English department. And then I was also the guest judge. And so I was the only one who was actually there virtually. Everyone else was there face to face. And really the goal of this competition was kind of to finish their semester by giving them a chance to have practice with their speaking skills, but also really to have a chance to have fun and to show off what they knew. So I want to walk you all through the game. I don't know, maybe I'll have some of you try to play it. Maybe we can write some answers in the chat. And then at the end, if we have a chance, you know, I wanted to kind of maybe ask you if you think this is something you could adapt at your own institution, why or why not, and then maybe what changes you could make if you were going to adapt it. Because of course, we're always looking to improve or, you know, change how we would use this in a different context. So the competition had 4 rounds. And like I said before, we actually combined 2 classes together for this competition. So there were maybe 80, 90 students who all kind of crowded into one classroom to have the competition. And after each round, the highest scoring teams moved on. And so in the final round, we had the final teams, and they were teams of 2 students working together. So the first round is what can you see? And this was, we're starting from the most, let's say, basic. And so in the first round, there's a short video that starts to play on the screen. And then as soon as students can identify what is being shown on the screen, they raise their hand, and the first team to raise their hand gets a chance to answer and then gets a point if they get it correct. I'll show you a sample of one of the videos. My host institution actually chose this video. I was not familiar with the website initially, but you'll see that some of the words are very, very basic. And so again, we're starting kind of at the easiest level for the students. Again, that's round one. And the students with kind of the highest scores move on to round two, which is, as you can see here, charades. And, at the beginning of the semester, they were very, very shy to speak. I would say their comprehension was excellent, but they were a little bit shy. By the time we got to know each other, and by the end of the semester, I think they were a little more out, their responses in charades. And so you'll see when I get to this part, there was one student who would act out and the others would guess the word. Round three, we called Catch the Images. Now we're getting way more difficult. I would say round 3 and 4 got a lot more challenging for the students. This was actually related to idioms in English. And so the students would see a picture on the screen and they would have to say, which English idiom do you think this picture represents? Actually, I would say even though this was more difficult, they did well with many of these. And finally, round 4, we finish with the most difficult part, fuel up your arguments. And this was where students were given a topic and they were given really a very, very short amount of time to prepare an oral response. And then they had to present it to the whole group of 80 or 90 students. So you can imagine how intense that was. That would even be intense for me to do. So I wanted to show you just some samples of the 4 rounds. I don't know, maybe I can make you guys play a little bit. And then at the end, I want to show you just what I saw from this whole competition. Maybe what were not just some of the benefits, but some of the challenges, of course. Because like I said, I was virtual and I was judging with my co-teachers and they were in the physical classroom. So again, round 1. And these are the directions actually that we would show the students. So you can see what the students would see on the screen here. So a video is played kind of from the beginning. And then the teachers in the classroom would push pause at a certain point in the video. Usually there's an arrow pointing at a picture. And the first team to raise their hand and say, I know what this is, would have a chance to answer. If they got it correct, they would get 1 point. I'm sorry, the first team to get to 2 points would also win. And then the first 10 teams would move to the next round. So again, the students were in teams of 2. Of course, you could do this with smaller groups, I guess larger groups, although it might get a little crazy with all the hands here. So this was just an example of a video. I'm actually going to slide ahead a little bit in the video here so you can get an idea of maybe what some of the students saw here. So for example, we'd pause here and the video would be paused and then the students would raise their hands. So I'm not pausing the video, but you can see again how they might raise their hands quickly. Some of these obviously easier than others. Many of them got chimney. Many of them got roof. Maybe some of the others a little more difficult. I will say, and I'll cover this part at the end, you'll notice that we had a few different videos here. And this is because, many times we had ties or we had some words that were too difficult for all the students and we had to kind of switch and move ahead. And so we made sure we had several videos, so more than enough for students to get the first group of 10. So again, the first 10 groups to get the most points would move on to the next round. We did also have tiebreakers and, like I said, extra videos, all of that available just in case we needed it for the students. Round one, I would say, went very quickly. The students, for the most part, did really well because, again, we're starting just with vocabulary. You could see the first video was maybe house vocabulary. We had one that was extreme sports. And I would say for our students, their vocabulary was very high. So round one went pretty quickly here. So we would take the first 10 teams and they would move to the next round. So like I explained, round two would be charades. I'm not going to ask anybody to do that one today. But what we would do is we would have one explainer and the others would be guessers. And we would show a word on the screen and we would give them 30 seconds. I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, the question of timing. And the explainer, again, is going to explain the word. The guessers can guess. If they were able to guess the word in 30 seconds, they move to the next round. So you could see this could mean only 2 teams move on. This could mean all of the teams move on. So this is where the game had to be a little bit more flexible. I would say this was actually probably the most difficult of the sections, even though we put this kind of as the, before the idioms, before the speaking at the end. This was a little more difficult, and I think it may have just been some of the words that we chose. We were trying to have the students review important vocabulary, and I think sometimes the words that you want people to know don't always fit perfectly with charades. But I'll show you some examples of these. So, for example, one of the first words that we used was ambition. You can see the little counter there. That also made them very nervous when we push play and they can hear the tick, tick, tick. So I would say ambition. They all knew the word, or it seemed like they all knew the word. But actually, if you think about it, it is very hard to do charades or to explain ambition without using the word. So again, we're planning to do this again, and I'll get to that later. We're going to switch out the vocabulary that we chose. Although some of them, they did pretty well with. For example, parachute. This was one that they were able to explain. So again, some of them maybe lent themselves maybe a little more easily to the charades concept. Of course, at the end, you can see we definitely put the answers on the screen. The point of this was to have a fun, engaging experience, but we want to make sure we're also taking the time to stop and review. We don't want to rush through it and just give them points. We want to make sure this is actually an effective review for the students. So I'm clicking through just a few of the words you can see here that we used. Actually, the word consumer came up in their writing class a lot also, a lot of their writing prompts for their writing exam. And so we wanted to put that word in there, not just for the speaking practice, but also for the writing practice. Enthusiastic was a fun one for them to explain. So again, these are just some examples of, as you can see, some of the words and how we had the timer going on the screen here. And at the end, if we have time, I do want to ask you maybe again how you would use this or not use this with your students. And of course, you would choose your own vocabulary here, not necessarily the words we used here, although I'm happy to share this and have anybody use this if you like. So round 3, catch the images. So remember, I said in the first round, 10 teams moved on. In the second round, any team could move on who got the charades in 30 seconds. So we didn't know how many teams would be left. We had a lot of faith that we could do the game no matter how many teams were left. And what we did is all of the remaining teams would see the same images on the screen. And this is where I might ask you guys to play along, maybe in the chat section, if you want to type an answer in a second. So what we did is we put some images on the screen to represent idioms in English. Our students use a lot of idioms. And with their partner, they would write down on a piece of paper what they believe the picture represents. So the picture represents an actual idiom. We had a few judges that were physically present in the classroom. And so they would walk around and they would actually check what the students were writing on the piece of paper. If they got it correct, they got 1 point. So you can see at the end here, this is how we get back to a manageable number of teams. So only 3 teams can move on. So we had a plan for how to narrow this down. So the top 3 groups would move on, which would mean the top 6 students. So I want to see, I'm not going to show all of these, but maybe I'll put a couple on the screen here. And if you can, see if you can guess what idiom this represents and maybe put it in the chat for me. I'm curious if anybody can get this one. See if you can guess what idiom this represents. I am not going to push the timer button because that really makes me nervous and it makes my students nervous. But see, does anybody want to type in chat, which idiom do you think this represents? You could send it to me privately, I guess, or you could do public, whatever you like. Okay, I see some answers coming in. So what idiom do you think this represents?
Have green fingers, yeah. Yes, to have green fingers. Yes, I think.
Oh, okay. So we have some answers here in the chat. To have green thumbs or green fingers. Good. I couldn't stop the timer. I apologize. So yeah, the students did pretty well with this one. To have a green thumb or green fingers, right? To be good at gardening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna skip this one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe this one. This one was a little challenging for them. Let me see if anybody can guess this one.
Rose glasses. Yeah.
Anybody? You could say it in chat or you could say it out loud, whatever you like.
Oh, it's really challenging, I must say.
Ah, yeah, more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how that might be challenging, right? So we can see it's a house, candy, but we don't always associate the word sweet, right, with home. That was a difficult one. Home sweet home.
Nice.
I'm going to go through some of these quickly just so you can see a few more that we had here. And I want to show you one at the end here. Oh, I liked this one. My co-teachers found this image and I liked this one. I'll just show you this one. To be on the same wavelength. Oh, I get that, right, with the waves. But I want to show you one at the end. And at first, my co-teachers put it in our slides. I had no idea what it was, and all the students guessed it. So, you know, sometimes it just depends on, my students are a lot younger, you know, so it's a more common expression. This one. I said, what is this? And the students all got it. So this one, to drop the L-bomb. Interesting, right? So to say, I love you for the first time. And they were very familiar with that expression. So this was actually an interesting activity for me also, because I got to see what idioms are most common that they practice in English in their culture versus the ones that maybe we use the most here. So finally, we finished the competition with 3 groups moving on to the final round. So this was the most challenging, difficult round. And this was called Fuel Up Your Arguments. And the teachers would put a topic on the screen randomly. And then with their partner, students had 30 seconds to prepare. Not a lot of time. So whatever the question said, they had 30 seconds to prepare, and then they had 1 minute to speak about the topic that was on the screen. So to speak together. You can see how they were scored here. And actually, this matches the rubric that they were scored with for the course and for their speaking assignments. And so this, you know, actually really practices what they were doing in the class. So they were their responses were based on lexical resources, grammar range, and accuracy, pronunciation, and fluency, and coherence. This is what we used. And this is where really we had to work with the technology and between virtual and between countries, because there were 3 judges. There were 2 in the classroom, and then I was on Zoom. And so I was listening to the students and I was giving them a score while they were speaking. And then I was using WhatsApp to send my score to the teachers, and they would put the scores on the board to get a final winner. So I'll show you some examples of what these look like. This is one example of a topic. In choosing a career, should young people follow their own dreams or take their parents' advice? So again, as soon as we put this on the screen, if this was your turn as a team, as a pair, 30 seconds to prepare, and then you have 1 minute to speak. Again, very similar to kind of what their final speaking exam will look like, but they're doing this in front of 80 plus people, plus judges. You know, it was high stakes, I would say. So that was one example of a topic. Another topic number 2, you know, technology was a big theme for us. So how do technologies change the way people eat? That was a difficult one, but they came up with a lot. It was actually something they had talked about in class during the semester. Topic number 3, what are good and bad sides of having virtual friends? And topic number 4, should universities ban the use of AI tools in student learning? So again, they had 30 seconds to prepare, and then they had to deliver a speech. This is where we did give students a quick break after the last pair went, because the judges had to work together quickly to combine, to add up the scores here. And so this was where I think technology, we did kind of depend on the technology because, like I said, I was texting my scores in WhatsApp to the teachers. They were combining it with their scores, and then we took the average to see, who the winning pair would be. And then we crowned a champion. We had a winner, and it was very sweet. My co-teachers bought little sweets kind of as prizes for the students. They also publicized this on their college website and their college social media. They put the pictures of the winners. So it was, a big deal for these students because they won this, speaking competition. I actually kind of touched on some of the challenges, as I was going through the game, but, a few things that were challenging as we did this. I would say, first of all, it was technology dependent, mostly to have me there because I was there virtually. We had to do a lot, as to make sure the technology was going to work. So if we lost internet, I would switch to a hotspot. If the connection was bad, I would turn off my video. We had to really be creative with the technology. And then, like I said, I had to use various methods to get my scores to the judges. The second one, I think, especially with the idiom section, it was a very subjective use of idioms. Which ones do we choose? And how do we know if we chose the ones that students really needed to practice? Like I said, they might use some more than I use. And in fact, when we were preparing this game, this is where the co-teachers and I had to go back and forth the most. I said, oh, we don't really use that expression here. Maybe that's more common in different countries. So I said, I'm not familiar with it, but is this a common one that you use there? So we really had to negotiate, which idioms are the most used and most useful to put in the game. Time limits, that was also really difficult. We had the timers on the screen. We had the timers counting. But in one of the sections, which was the charades, I think the timer showed 30 seconds. I don't think any students could do it in 30 seconds. So immediately we said, okay, the judges quickly chatted and we said, let's give them 1 minute. So we had to kind of adapt last minute and say, is this working? Is this not working? So if this is something you want to do with your students, I might recommend more than 30 seconds for the charade sections. You can see here in general, the charade section was difficult. In the end, we switched. Instead of one person explaining in small groups, we switched to have 2 people explaining. It made it go a little bit easier. And that also helped with the time limit issue, I would say. So I kind of just want to finish, and then if anybody has comments or questions, this was the first time that we did this. It was my first time working with the university in Vietnam. They have asked me to continue next semester working with them, and I'm very excited. We're going to do this again, but we have some ideas for how to adapt it. And this is just based on what we noticed the first time. Depending on which levels we have, we've come up with some ways to modify, maybe for lower level or higher level students. I think for lower level students, like I said, even for higher level students, they might need more time for some of the sections. Or I guess, depending on the activity, we could eliminate some of the time constraints. Definitely some simpler vocabulary would be helpful, or even vocabulary that's a little bit easier to act out or explain. I think for lower level students, we could also have multiple choice, for example, for the idiom sections or some of the other sections. So if we co-teach for a lower level, we're thinking about some of these options. For higher level students, we thought about maybe adding a debate at the end. I don't know. We'll have to try that out instead of just, 1 minute speaking. One thing that you notice here also is maybe we would require complete sentence responses, because a lot of times the students were answering just with a word or a phrase, and this would make it more challenging. So maybe have the higher level students, they need to speak in a complete sentence. Or instead of guessing an idiom, students have to explain an idiom. Again, these could be for more advanced students. And then for all students, regardless of level, we would also make sure to have extra words, prompts, any activity, just to have extra in case of a tie, or in case an activity is maybe too difficult. And we kind of did this last minute, actually. We quickly added in things. But I think if we had this a little bit more prepared in the slides for the students, it would be very helpful. So that's all I had here. I just wanted to share the final picture of the students competing here. This was not all of them, but most of them. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I know we're out of time, but my email address is here. If you feel like you have ideas about how you could use this in your classroom, if you have any questions or comments, suggestions, frustrations, please reach out to me and let me know. But thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Ashley, for this wonderful presentation. I believe that competition brought a lot of fun to your class, yes, because I know that usually students like competitions, and I am sure that it was an unforgettable experience for them. I liked the part with idioms, yes, because you need a lot of knowledge of idioms, and my students from university like this activity very much. From time to time, we have a very similar one. Thank you again, Ashley, for being with us and for your presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome. And since I'm stopping my screen share, I'll put my email address in chat for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
yes.
you.
So, dear participants, we have come up to the end of our part 1, yes, of this section. And now we are having a 10-minute break because at 3 p.m., yes, in 10 minutes, we will have 2 more speakers, Jeannine Daly and Alona Kladieva. So please stay with us for another 10 minutes and then we will continue. So, 10-minute break.
All right, I'll begin my slideshow if I can share my screen.
Yes, for sure, yeah.
Okay, there we go. So welcome. I like to start with this I've been working with Ukrainian teachers now for 2 years, first at the Odessa Teacher Training Institute, and more recently with faculty in Ukraine. And I want to say thank you to you. It's a privilege to join you. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainian teachers have been brave and resilient and adaptable and dedicated. And I've had the privilege of meeting hundreds of Ukrainian teachers who, despite working in terrible conditions and worrying about their own families, they have learned new skills to do the best for their students. So thank you very much, teachers in Ukraine. It's an honor to join you today, and thank you to the organizers. Okay, so this morning or this evening, I'm going to speak to you about incorporating virtual exchange in project-based learning. We're going to talk about the background and benefits of project-based learning and virtual exchange, and I'm going to share with you a project that I did as a virtual educator in Morocco that incorporated virtual exchange into a project-based unit. And then I'm going to share resources for using virtual exchange in your classroom. So project-based learning is a teaching method in which students learn by actively engaging in real-world and personally meaningful projects. Project-based learning makes learning come alive for students. Students can work on a project over an extended period of time, from a week up to a semester, that engages them in solving a real-world problem or answering a complex question. The students can then demonstrate their knowledge, and the teacher can assess them when they create a public product or a presentation for a real audience. So research has shown that through project-based learning, students develop deep content knowledge, as well as critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication skills. So for an assignment to be considered project-based learning, it should require students to think critically, create an original or authentic product that can be made public and shared. It requires students to collaborate and to reflect during and after the completion of the project. This doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't happen if you ask students to do one thing. Teachers need to design materials and assignments to guide students to make the project be successful. So when I did some research on project-based learning, I found this timeline that goes back as far as Confucius and Socrates. I thought that was very interesting, and it explains that Confucius and Socrates used project-based learning. So it has a long history, and it's especially beneficial to English language learners when it uses hands-on activities, peer interaction, rich language use. These activities have been shown to increase retention. Some examples of project I've enjoyed doing with my students was producing a recital, holding an invention convention, creating digital guides for international students in New York City. I know that teachers, that many of you, most of you are probably using project-based learning already in your classroom, because when I was doing workshops at the Odessa Teacher Training Institute, I was really impressed with some of the projects that my teachers were doing with their students. They were doing cooking projects and making cookbooks and giving presentations about different countries. It was wonderful. So virtual exchange. Now, I was trying to write a concise definition of virtual exchange, and I got stuck, and I did what everybody seems to be doing lately. I asked AI, and AI gave me a really good definition. So I'm going to use it, and I'm giving the credit to AI. AI states, and I agree, that virtual exchange is a digital education format that facilitates intercultural and often interdisciplinary collaboration between participants from different geographical and cultural backgrounds. So that sums it up. For something to be virtual exchange, it needs to be technology based, of course. I'm not sure why that's in the definition, because if it's virtual, we do need some technology there. It has to be sustained. So this is important. A one-day event is not considered virtual exchange. It needs to be sustained. It needs to involve ongoing interactions and learning activities over a period of time to be developed. Intercultural and interdisciplinary. Virtual exchange brings together learners from different cultural backgrounds, and it can involve collaborative projects and activities that bridge multiple disciplines. It's not just for English language learning, although that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, virtual exchange, some research about virtual exchange. It has been shown to increase language learning and cultural awareness and develop soft skills like teamwork, critical thinking, and problem solving. Virtual exchange provides geographical and culturally diverse learners with authentic and purposeful interactions in the target language. Research emphasized the positive impact virtual exchanges can have on functional, social linguistic, grammatical, and strategic communicative competences, as well as intercultural ones. So the benefits are extensive. So I will be very happy to tell you about a wonderful virtual exchange that I did with English teachers in training in Morocco. In spring of 2023, I taught 2 sections of TESOL methods to 19 pre-service teachers in Beni Mellal, Morocco. They were really enthusiastic and wonderful young future teachers. They were in their last semesters of a bachelor's degree program. They had a lot of energy. The course as a whole was an example of virtual exchange. It was sustained. It was over a long period of time. It involved cultural interaction. It was based on technology. So the whole course was a form of virtual exchange. But within that, we did a project-based unit that was a virtual exchange. Throughout the semester, our focus became communicative language teaching. This project was with English language programs. My position was virtual educator, and I was given the instruction to teach TESOL methods, which is a really, really broad field. And when I went into the class with the students, I found that they knew a lot about theory. They really were new to communicative language teaching. So that became the focus of our semester. And my students had a lot of questions about how successful communicative language teaching is implemented in the United States, in New York City. So at Hunter College, as a field supervisor, I travel to different schools throughout New York City, and I see a lot of schools and get to see a lot of communicative language teaching in different settings. So they were interested in how it's implemented in diverse classrooms. They were very interested in diverse classrooms because if they had teaching practice, they were teaching English as a foreign language to Moroccan students in a class. So I proposed a virtual exchange and authentic project based on the students' interests and needs, which would allow them to find out from primary sources in New York City how CLT is implemented in New York. So this is where my students were from. This is Morocco, and this is Beni Mellal. And it was such an exciting project. Benimol is a small city, so it was their first time having a teacher from overseas. It was very exciting. So when I presented this idea to my students in Beni Malal about doing a project, a virtual exchange project, they were really, really excited. And right away, we started by making a flyer. And I'm glad we did because the flyer made it all real. And it said it was that starting signal. We're going to do this. I made this flyer on canva.com during class time with the students. So I was making it and they gave me some input. Oh, put a picture here, put this information here, and so forth. So we created this flyer together. And for homework, I asked the students to write 4 potential questions for the New York City panel. So in making our flyer, we decided that what we were going to create was a panel discussion, an international exchange between my students in Beni Malal and some novice teachers in New York City. So I gave my students assignments like writing potential questions for the panel, and I graded these assignments, and I created and shared project-based learning objectives. So this was the assignment I gave to my students just like this. So this is extensive and very specific. I asked them to write 4 possible panel discussion questions that they might want to ask pre-service teachers in New York City. And they did that. We had decided on our topic. So they had the topic there. And they had a deadline to do this. I gave them some models of possible discussion questions because I wanted them developed. I wanted them to write follow-up questions if needed. And this was a graded assignment. And this is an example of some feedback on proposed questions that the students gave me. I won't go through it all. If you want to email me after this presentation, I'm happy to share this slide presentation with you and you can read all the small print. So it was very formal, the way they designed the questions and the way I responded to them. Now, for productive language development, teachers must identify target language for the students to practice in their virtual exchange. So don't forget to identify and require the use of new target language in a virtual exchange activity because you want your students to learn and practice some new English, in addition to connecting culturally and learning new content and communicating authentically. So my students in Beni Malal spoke English very well, but they were still learning to master it. So I designed these objectives for them. So in addition to the project, the content of our project, which was to plan and execute a panel discussion on Zoom, be present and prompt, write detailed questions and follow-up questions, and to plan roles for the conference day, I set up these language objectives. I asked and required them to demonstrate proficiency in professional, effective, and precise language appropriate to an academic conference. I asked them to utilize the word implement in verb and noun form. And I required them to write and speak in compound complex sentences. And it was important and productive to have these language objectives to push the students to use this new language throughout the project. So after the students submitted their questions for the panel to me, we went into groups and the groups selected the best questions for the panel. And we put those into a Google Doc. And then together as a class, we added a formal introduction and we wrote a schedule around the questions. I set up roles for the students for the conference day, and the students chose their roles. The students with speaking parts wrote their speaking parts, and students who were going to ask the questions could choose from a list of questions. This was our schedule. Now, back in New York, it became my job, or I offered to get the members of the panel from New York City teachers. I wanted novice teachers because my students in Ben Milal were going to be novice teachers. So I reached out to colleagues at Hunter TESOL. I put a message in the listserv. I contacted some local schools. It was actually challenging to get teachers to commit to being on the panel. There was a huge amount of interest, but when it came to actually committing and saying, I'll be there on this day, and this is my name, and this is my bio, that took me a lot of time. And I found people preferred to respond closer to the event. So I ended up changing the panel membership close to the event. But it all came together. So on conference day, we had a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, a lot of new teacher energy, and it went great. The questions were asked and answered thoroughly, and the moderator of the panel was terrific. I was in the background this day. I wanted it to be their experience. I really wanted them to run it, and they did. They just did a fantastic, fantastic conference day. This is a photo. I'm in the photo. The other participants there, that's just Google Images. My students in Morocco, many of them did not wish to be videotaped or photographed, so I don't have a lot of video or photos from the event. I had such great feedback. It was heartwarming. I was so pleased. It really was the highlight of a wonderful semester together. Everybody wanted to do it again. Everyone wanted to keep in touch with each other. It was a wonderful cultural exchange. It met the goals of cultural exchange and virtual exchange, and the students used the target language that I wanted. They got to practice academic language suitable for a conference. It was a success. There are some things I would do differently. The structure in designing the panel discussion conference was effective, um, but the sustained length of this project um, should have been done better. So everybody was there together for the day of the conference, and I did want the Moroccan pre-service teachers and the New York City teachers to continue collaborating and continue to develop their ideas about communicative language teaching, but I had not given structure for that, and it didn't happen as to the extent that I wanted it to. They kept in touch with each other. There were some emails back and forth, and then that was the end of it. So next time I would plan follow-up events so that this is a truly sustained virtual exchange. And I would give more responsibility to the students to find the participants, and that would be exchange that would happen before the conference day. I also found that I needed more time. I think we had planned for 50 minutes, and the time just went so fast. Okay, so now how can you use virtual exchange in your classroom? I hope you will. Virtual exchange is sustained intercultural communication. You can focus on an English language project, or you can require the use of English as a medium of instruction in a project in another discipline. I've seen all of these. So students in one country can work, excuse me, on the science project with students in another country over a period of time using English as a medium of instruction. They may be one group might speak English as a native language, or maybe they don't. Maybe these are students from countries with different languages, but they both speak English, so that becomes their shared language to use. So multiple disciplines, you can use virtual exchange for multiple disciplines. There's no limit. It can be any kind of discipline, STEM, science, sports, culture. For a focus on language and culture, you can do a mystery Skype. You can play online games together. If there's a tournament, it will allow for sustained interaction. Remember, we don't want to do just a one-day event for a virtual exchange. One-day events are fantastic. They're really fun. You can do them. But what I'm talking about today are sustained, developed virtual exchanges where people really get to know each other because the activity extended over a period of time. Some people have done book groups, even with young children. They can read a child's book and then have book groups about that every month. There's been watch parties. Football tournaments are great for watch parties. You can give a target language for that. So could you give me a show of hands? How many have used Mystery Skype? Okay. Okay. It's very popular. Um, I'll show you Mystery Skype, and I'll show you some other ways to connect with partners for virtual exchange. So hopefully at this point, if this is new to you, you're saying, wow, this is great. I want to do a virtual exchange in my English class, but now how do I meet people and how do I set it up? It's actually not that hard. And let me show you a virtual Skype here. Mystery Skype. Are you able to see my screen there in
Yes.
Facebook now? Okay,
Yeah, we
great.
can.
So this is the Mystery Skype page on Facebook, and there's over 11,000 members in this page, and there's other Mystery Skype pages. This seems to be the busiest one and the most recent one, but there's other pages too, like Mystery Skype for Europe or Mystery Skype for young learners. So you can search around, and I've talked to a lot of teachers who are using this, and no one has ever said that they had any problems, that they met someone who was weird or had a bad experience. So I feel comfortable recommending this to you. And you can see here, these are coming in. This is most relevant. There's tons of recent activity, and there's so many different requests here. All ages, all kinds of projects. I see a lot of teachers come on here the night before and say, can someone meet my class tomorrow? They want to share the results of their science project with students from China. So there's everything here. For a true virtual exchange, we want it to be something that extends. So, but you can meet people here and talk to them about doing that. So that's Mystery Skype. A lot of people, a lot of teachers interested in connecting online and virtual exchange use Mystery Skype successfully. So I do recommend that. I found Talk Abroad. This is for higher ed and high school. So this is interesting. There is a fee. I haven't used it, but I've heard that it's very good and a lot of universities use it. So it's something to keep in mind. You can have a look at that website. LinkedIn is a good way to connect with teachers. And this ePals looks really good. I see a lot of activities on it. It's a message board for teachers who want to connect learners throughout the world in a global community. I can't vouch for it in the sense that I haven't spoken with people who used it, but it looks really professional and there's a lot of activity on it and it's been around for a while and it comes recommended by some good authorities. So it's not that hard to connect. The world is connected, right? We're here today. I'm in New York, you're in Ukraine, and we're connecting this way. So it's actually not so hard to connect. Also, every school has a website. So if for some reason you want to connect with a specific region, or you can find the website and email administrators. In all my work connecting online, I've never found it hard to meet people. And I've never had any troubles or bad experiences. These are two excellent websites that go into depth about virtual exchange far more than I can in 30 minutes. And I do recommend these two websites, the Goethe Institute and the Stevens Initiative for Virtual Exchange. Very helpful for generally more information on the topic and ideas and ways to connect. So tell me any questions or any experiences that you have had or ideas. Alana, do
I'll
you have your
share
hand
one.
up? Go ahead. Yes, please.
Are you talking to
Easy.
me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, as a virtual educator, one year I arranged an exchange with another virtual educator in, oh my goodness, I'm just drew a blank. I just drew a blank. There was a Morocco. Yeah, I think it was Morocco. Yes, it was. And what we did is we had each student come and bring something, an object that could be seen that meant something to them or to their culture. And then we put them into small breakout groups so that they were able to show and ask, the students could ask and answer questions of others. And it wasn't sustained, it was a one evening event, but it went really well. So it was wonderful for the students from Ukraine to be able to speak with the other students. And I think that it made such a difference for the other students because they understood, I think, better, what these students in Ukraine go through and have gone through for the last 3+ years. So it really was a success. The students loved meeting other people, and I think it really made an impression on them.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have any questions about using virtual exchange in a project? I'm happy to share my experience.
So virtual exchange is becoming more and more popular nowadays, yes, with the help of technologies that are developing constantly. And since the COVID pandemic, yes, and it's great because it opens new opportunities for people from all over the world to meet each other, to exchange experience, to exchange ideas. It's nice for both students and teachers. Personally, I have never done any virtual exchange, but I'd like to try. Yes, it's interesting.
I hope you will. It's really fun for the students, and once you get started, there's just so many things that you can do.
Yeah.
And it did the concept of virtual exchange became really popular after COVID because teachers found out that they could do all these things.
Yeah.
I don't know, we didn't do them before, but now we can.
And it's great.
Any other questions or comments before I sign off? I think my time is just about up. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a privilege to be with you. Thank you for all you do for your students.
And thank you for your valuable experience. For sure, we'll take advantage of some of the ideas you presented, and I'm sure one day I will try this virtual exchange.
Thank you, Olha. Thank you for organizing. My email is here if you want to reach out or if you want a copy of the slideshow. I'm happy to share it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue. And now we have one more speaker with us today. It's Alona Kladieva, and she's a Ukrainian PhD student. And now but she is teaching at the University of Arizona. Yes, and Alona is going to talk about teaching language in times of displacement, culturally responsive pedagogies for Ukraine's diverse classrooms. So, Alona, please, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ulha, and good day, everyone. I'm just trying to think what time zone we're in. I just wanna a spoiler alert. This is gonna be by far one of the most attended of my academic presentations. So I'm excited and a little bit nervous, but I also thank you so much for being here today and being interested in this topic. I'm gonna share my screen and you let me know. By the way, can you hear me okay?
Yes, everything's okay.
I hope my voice is okay because I've recently woke up and yeah. Okay, so here is my slideshow. I hope you can all see it okay.
Yes, we can see.
And like Olya just introduced, this is a shortened title, so I can go on the slide. It's called Culturally Responsive Pedagogies for Ukraine's Super Diverse Classrooms, and I'm Alona. I'm right now in Arizona, and at the University of Arizona, I'm studying many things second language acquisition related, but my main research interest is culturally responsive pedagogies in classrooms and also combining culturally responsive pedagogies in AI mediated instruction for multilingual classrooms. But today we're just going to focus on CRPs. And this is what I'll be trying to do in the workshop. Hopefully, we'll be able to hit all of the main points here. So I would like to first frame what this is all about. Then we will have a what I call CRP in practice, where we'll all together discover some interactive scenario activities and share our strategies. And then finally, we'll have some time for digesting all this informations and using it for reflections and takeaways. Okay, so let me start by asking a question. This is a simple yet a complex question. I want you to think about who are your students and what languages and cultures do they bring into your classroom. Okay, so please, if you can, use a chat box here on Zoom, and let us know, or you can just think about it if you are still not ready answering this question. That's okay. We'll get back to the question once again, and you will see why I've decided to ask the question twice. So if you want to start leaving your responses in the chat, and I'm gonna check them in a few minutes. Okay. So this is a map about Ukraine's linguistic diversity, and you can see what different languages are spoken as first languages and as second languages in Ukraine. But this is another big thing that we all need to remember. This is unfortunately the map from over 20 years old. It's from 2001, right? This is the census data which I was able to find. After doing my research on this, I wasn't able to find any official language map of Ukraine from recent times. So unfortunately, we'll have to do with these numbers right here. Also acknowledging, I mean, not unfortunately, but unfortunately for the time gap, acknowledging that these numbers might have almost drastically changed in this last, 24 years? Right. but I did want to show it to you to recognize how many different people live in Ukraine, and this is just linguistic diversity, but we understand that along with linguistic diversity comes cultural diversity and ethnic diversity, religious diversity, social diversity, and so on. And another question for you all, this is a question for speakers of all languages that are here today. What do you call this? So I tried to find these pictures. And I understand that they represent different kinds of foods, but I'm asking you, like, generally, what is the umbrella term for all this? What you're seeing, I don't want to say the English word, because if you speak English as your primary language, you might want to name it. And I'm especially asking my Ukrainian folks because I do have a feeling that even in Ukrainian it can be called differently, right? So for this one, I'm gonna need to I will wait for some of your answers to drop in the chat box because it's more interesting that way. So please, if you can be a little active now and start dropping your answers, especially like I said, my Ukrainian folks, so that we see that diversity that I'm talking about firsthand.
Can you please say the question again?
I'm sorry, yeah, I talked a lot. So what are these called? Just what do you call these things?
Mhm.
Somebody said snack food, yes. Sweets, solodka. Okay, I'm getting to that, yeah, pastry, okay. Anybody else? Just maybe one more response. Okay. So this is also what I was thinking, but and I was okay, goodies, yeah, and I was suggesting that maybe in English, because to me this one didn't look like sweets, but they all say things differently. And I was thinking that maybe in English we could call these delicacies, you know. But in Ukrainian, my grandminds and in turn me, because I'm used to it, we call it mintusi. Okay. Have you ever heard of this word? I don't know, and I didn't even know it existed outside of the realm of my family. Um, but then I recently went to Threads. You do know this like social media Threads, where somebody was asking, what are some words in Ukrainian that you use that other people may not understand? And somebody was saying this word, somebody was saying "mintuse," and I was like, do people really say that actually? And I'm from Luhansk region, so uh, we do have a special word for this. And this goes to show that even in Ukraine, growing up speaking the same language, we may have very different experiences in terms of language and other things. Okay, I hope it proved the point. I was trying to think how to do it in a more interactive way. And this goes to show that even though I grew up in Ukraine and I spoke Ukrainian, I still used different vocabulary that you all might have used growing up in Ukraine. But of course, if you grew up in a different country, that's a whole another life experience, right? So this is where the notion of super diversity comes in. According to, and by the way, this is a slide with the most text you're gonna see in my presentation. I tried to use as less text as possible, right? So according to Stephen Vertovich, superdiversity is a concept that describes a multidimensional and dynamic diversification of society led by increasing global migration It aims at capturing the complex interactions of dimension of diversities beyond ethnicity. So what we're talking about is that if we have diverse students in our classroom, it doesn't only include their diversity, their ethnic group or their race. It includes a lot of other things. Like I said, maybe they speak the same language, but they have different dialect of that same language, or they grew up in a different region, in our case of Ukraine, and so they have different food preferences and different traditions and different religion and all of the things. And they celebrate different holidays, right? So these are the things that are affecting student super diversity in Ukraine right now. Unfortunate things, we are seeing forced displacement because of full-scale invasion, and actually back in 2013, 2014, right? We see students that might speak a different language if they come from another territory, such as forcefully displaced people from Crimea and other regions. And they're trying to find a new sense of home in this new community, even though they may be in the same country, they're still not home. And it takes time and it takes courage to be able to try to find a new sense of home. This is what our students are dealing with. And I actually, when I started creating this presentation, I had a certain age group in mind. I was thinking like, oh, well, middle schoolers or high schoolers or students like this. But honestly, the more I think about it, the more I understand that these could be adult students as well. They're also, even though they're not kids anymore, they're also struggling with those issues and trying to find a new sense of home. And of course, if you have Ukrainian students who are in a different country right now because of forced displacement or any other reasons, they struggle with similar things, right? And this is where I want to ask you once again, who are your students? Thinking about everything I've just talked about, maybe you'll expand your definition a little bit, or maybe you'll think of something else. So again, who are your students in terms of super diversity, and what languages and cultures do they bring into your classroom? I'm gonna go back and read your previous answers while you're dropping some answers in the chat. If you wanna unmute yourself and like talk about your responses, that's totally fine with me. Tracy, thank you for dropping your response. Do you wanna possibly unmute yourself, or do you want me to just read your?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. The school system itself had students from over 200 countries, and I think it was like 194 languages. My school was extremely diverse. All of this is outside of Washington, D.C. So you can imagine very, very diverse. But even within the diversity in our school, there are lots of students who spoke Spanish, but different Spanish, depending on where they were from. And we had the majority of our students, at least our ESOL students, were Indian and several different languages spoken. So it was really quite diverse. It was really wonderful to be able to bring the world into your classroom every day.
Sure, thank you so much. And then
Mhm.
Jasmine, you also responded. Do you wanna unmute yourself, or
Jeannine?
oh, sorry, I'm so
That's okay.
sorry.
That's
I
it.
misread the
Yeah,
name. Please go
my
ahead.
pre-service teachers are in New York City, and some people say that Queens, New York, has the most languages spoken per square mile than any place else in the world. So it's very exciting, and they do bring We have recorded over 180 different languages spoken by the students in New York City public schools. So, but now you're making me realize and think about how within 180 different languages, we have multi-cultures within that. So we do have a lot of Ukrainian speakers, and now you're making me aware of how different the cultures are among them. We have a lot of students from Venezuela, and within Venezuela, there are multiple different languages and different types of culture.
Thank you so much, Jeannine. And I want to really hear from anybody who works with Ukrainian students as well, or who are in Ukraine. Can we get at least one answer? I'm just trying to drive my point home that what Jeannine just said, like how to help you think about how even within the same country we might have diverse learners. So anybody in Ukraine that would help us with.
Yes, I can speak. I teach university students, but they are all from Ukraine, only from Ukraine, but from different parts of this country. And though most of them speak Ukrainian, it's their mother tongue, some of them speak Russian, but they represent different parts and different cultures. For example, some students are from Crimea, yeah, and their culture differs a lot from our Ivano-Frankivsk region, or pupils, students from Zakarpattia or Transcarpathian region. A lot of difference, so culture differs greatly, yes.
Thank you so much, Ola. You helped me greatly driving the point home that I was trying, and you'll see I'll reference Crimean Tatar students in particular again and again in this presentation, because this is I really have a soft spot for Crimea. And this is what we can do to support those culturally diverse students in our classrooms. We can use culturally responsive instruction with them. And the first thing I want you, if you don't take away anything from this presentation, but you only take away one thing, I hope it is that culturally responsive instruction is assets based. This is like the main thing that makes it work. So it means that we're not using deficit thinking or deficit pedagogies. We're not saying, oh, the student doesn't speak so-and-so language, or the student had very minimal instruction in a foreign language, in English, because they're from this region. We try not to use this thinking, but we might say something like, the student doesn't speak this language well yet because they were brought up in a different environment, and we as instructors can do our best to help them speak the language. And this instruction also places students at the center of the learning, as I'm pretty sure you all heard about student-centered learning. So this is what CRP is, among other things. We are, by bringing their cultures into the mix of teaching, by making it central to our instruction, we are placing our students at the center of the learning, because we help them be seen and be heard and be valued in this community, and let them know that, yes, we know that you are your own person, that you have different backgrounds, different lived experiences. So then in turn, it values students' languages, cultures, and backgrounds, and simultaneously challenges and supports students. So you might think, where does the challenge come in this? And the challenge is that by this instruction, another thing that is not here on the slide is that according to Gloria Latson-Billing, she says that at the core of this is actually successful academic performance of our students. So we shouldn't forget about this. So along with bringing their cultures and backgrounds, we also make sure we support their academic success, and by acknowledging all those different cultures and what's the word? And exposing our students to it, we challenge them to see a different world. Like what I just said, people, let's say we have students who are originally from Ivano-Frankivsk and they lived there their whole lives, but now they see all these different students, and by letting them talk about their cultures, their languages, we expose students, and sometimes that might be uncomfortable even. So this is where the challenge comes in. And finally, I realize that we don't have so much time, but here is what we're gonna do. And I have 3 questions here on the slide to think about how CRP could help. But for the sake of time, of course, we're not gonna go through every single question. So if you could choose one question only and think about it, we hopefully will have a little time to discuss it later. So just one question to think about in your classroom. What strategies could affirm students' identities, cultures, and languages? How could translanguaging or adapted materials support learning? And what shifts in classroom norms or teacher mindset would be helpful? So just one question you want to think about as we are continuing this workshop, right? Do you want me to keep the slide longer, or am I okay to move on? Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Yes, I think we can.
And now, unfortunately, again, I'm gonna talk more to give you some strategies I was thinking about. Number one that you could do is, first of all, learn about your students. Because and it's okay that you might not even know how diverse your students are. I didn't realize it before. I didn't realize Ukraine was so diverse, or any other country for that matter was so diverse. So you'll need to learn about your students if you want to acknowledge their backgrounds and cultures, and you could do it through surveys. They don't have to be long. Just ask them what languages do you speak as your native language or primary language. And I said interview here, but it could be as small as just asking attendance question or giving them exit ticket, where you ask them about their hobbies, their favorite food, or holidays they celebrate. All of this brings in cultures, right? And then if you can integrate diverse cultures, for example, you have you're teaching math, which I'm not sure any of us does, but let's imagine. And instead of determining the diameter of a generic plate, let's say you help them determine the diameter of a specific ethnic food platter. So let's say Romanian food platter or Crimean Tatar food platter. That, I know it's a little thing, but sometimes as educators, when we hear about different pedagogies, we might feel overwhelmed. Every time I hear about new approach of pedagogy, I do feel overwhelmed. So here, and sometimes we don't have a freedom to redesign the entire curriculum or even the entire lesson plan. So I'm hopefully giving you some strategies that you could, without redesigning the whole thing and without feeling overwhelmed, you can just slowly and surely integrate some of these ideas. You could also present new concepts by using student vocabulary, bring in guest speakers who, I realize this is more challenging, but now with Zoom and all the modern day technologies possible, guest speakers from different cultures that could tell the rest of the class about this culture, and also use media that positively depict a range of cultures, preferably in your own country, so a student sees how it's related, right? And I see you were dropping some wonderful ideas in the chat. Thank you so much. We unfortunately gonna move on for now because I do want to show you some activities here. You could do culturally affirming writing prompts, and I linked some of the activities that you can find. These are all public access. This is, for example, from New York Times. So if you do want to have access to this presentation, I'll be more than happy to share it with you, to email it to you, or even just drop the link in the chat.
It would be great. Thank you.
This one is my own creation, and it's nothing big. You will see that these are attendance questions I was asking my students. And since I'm now teaching in the US, I'm teaching international students. Of course, they're all diverse. But I want a big spoiler alert, some of the question can be very traumatizing for a student. So please use them at your discretion. Please use only if you think that students would want to share about their hometown. Because one of the question is, what's your favorite spot in your hometown? Or is there a sound or smell here that makes you feel at home now? I think we can all realize how. Oh, did you just see my questions? I'm sorry. Did you see the document, or am I not showing this to you?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So I believe we can all realize how traumatizing this can be to some of our students. So use them at your own discretion, right? And here is what I wanted to show you, how you could potentially bring in different languages into your classroom, while also, so it's not all about, oh, we are just bringing the languages, we're also teaching them some important scientific concepts, right? This is, for example, they are learning chemistry, I believe, yes. And then students leave these post notes in their different languages, and you can see Ukrainian. Somebody in the US was teaching students from different backgrounds, and they also loved Ukrainian. And you could do it again in any country, I believe, because everywhere your students are diverse, more diverse than sometimes we may realize. And now that we only have 3 minutes, it's a challenge to always be on time, right? So I want to ask you, what is one CRP practice you will try or rethink? Because I assume that some of you might already use CRP in your classroom. So again, what is one practice that you'll try or rethink in your classroom? Feel free to unmute yourself or leave a message in the chat that any takeaways from today. It could be practice, it could be strategy, activity, anything you take away from this.
I will start, okay? So when you were asking a question about strategies, and one activity came to my mind, students can, for example, it's an art lesson, yes, and students speak about national costumes, and they can organize like workshop when everybody brings in their national costume or the costume of their region and shows how to wear it, how to dress it correctly in the correct way, and how to present, how to behave, because you know that when you're wearing national costume, your behavior changes a little bit.
It absolutely does. It happens to me, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of other people. And yeah, I have not even thought about this idea, but such a great thing to try. Especially if you can, right? Anybody else? I want to acknowledge that I saw the chat, and you all were great, active. I saw Tatiana said you could rely more on students' first language to help students and learn the words in their target language. And then Raisa said interviewing and bringing in a guest speaker is something that she took away from this workshop. I do hope that you'll have a chance to again go through the slide deck or even read the literature and find, or just internet and find out more about how you can integrate CRPs. Here is my references, and here is I'm asking you to scan this QR code in case you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email. And thank you so much. If you wanna send me an email or be friends on LinkedIn, be colleagues on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy. And like I promised, just a sec, I'm gonna drop the slide deck in the chat so you can all have access to it. Okay, and we are done.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm sorry for not
No, everything's
giving more time for some of the activities as I was hoping.
It's okay. It was a pleasure to listen to you. So, thank you. I want to say thank you again to every presenter. Thank you, Trisha and Becky, and thank you, Ashley, Jeannine, and Alona. It was a great pleasure for me to moderate this part of the online convention. And again, thank you. My heart will thank for your support, for your understanding, for your standing with Ukraine, with Ukrainian educators and students. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I think we can finish this part of the convention, but still I want to make an announcement. Just don't forget that at 5 p.m. we have 2 more wonderful speakers. So please feel free to follow, to join Zoom meeting and enjoy, because I'm sure you will learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. That's
Thank
great.
you so much.